Hello and welcome to the shop. My name is Joaquin Watai. This is Watai Wood Turning. Today I'm going to teach you how to use Baxter's Threadmaster from Best Wood Tools. Before we begin, I need to remind you that you are responsible for safety in your own shop. I will be giving you safety tips regarding the use of the Baxter, but ultimately, safety in your shop while wood turning is your job. For this project, I use a blank that is roughly 2 by 2 by 4 inches, mounted in 1-inch jaws in a Nova G3 chuck. This can be scaled to suit your needs. For the base of the box, I turn a bead that is sized exactly to fit the chuck as a tenon. I finish this bead and the base of the box completely before separating the top of the box from the base. Once the body of the box is separated, face off the lid, hollow it, and cut the mortise. It is important when making a threaded box that the sides of the mortise are perfectly parallel. This can be confirmed using the inside diameter jaws of your vernier caliper. Once you're satisfied that your mortise is cut correctly, make a chamfer at the base of the mortise using the toe of your skew. This creates an area for your threads to escape. Finally, cut a chamfer on the inside lip of the mortise. This allows the threads to enter the cut below the surface of the box, making for a clean entry and protecting the thread. At this stage, sand and finish the inside of your lid before cutting the threads. Once the threads have been cut, you don't want to introduce anything that might damage them, such as sandpaper. We recommend you cut the power to your lathe when installing and uninstalling the cutter head. This carbide cutter is extremely sharp, and accidentally powering the lathe while installing it could result in serious injury. When tightening the drawbar to hold the collet, do not over-torque it. Tightening the drawbar a quarter turn once it's installed snugly should ensure the collet is holding the cutter head firmly. Over-torquing this could result in the collet and cutter being jammed in your spindle. This could damage the Morse taper. Return power to the lathe and start it, ensuring the cutter head is running true. Remove power to the lathe while installing and positioning your Threadmaster. This is a side view of the Baxter 12.5X. This is the lower slide, and this is the lower slide lock. This is the auxiliary slide, and this is the auxiliary slide lock. All models except for the Baxter Threadmaster 12.5 have an auxiliary slide. This is the cross slide dial, and the cross slide lock screw. This is the riser plate. Its height determines the height of the threader head. The taller the lathe, the taller the riser plate. This is the threading head assembly. It includes the spindle head, the lead screw knob, the lead screw, and the lead screw safety knob. Slide your Threadmaster onto the lathe and screw the chuck onto the threading head spindle. Best practice is to start with the threading head spindle all the way against the threading head. This helps produce repeatable results in thread cutting. Position the Baxter so that your lid is approximately 1/4 inch from the thread cutter. Adjust the auxiliary slide or the cross slide dial so that the cutter head fits inside the mortise. The female threads will be cut on the inboard side of the mortise with the cutter head spinning toward you. Turn the lead screw knob, moving the mortise toward the cutter head. Adjust the auxiliary slide so that the cutter head is just touching the inside of the mortise. Lock the auxiliary slide lock and back the lead screw knob out, removing the mortise from the cutter. If you have the Baxter 12.5, cross slide positioning will be done using the cross slide dial alone. If your Threadmaster has an auxiliary slide, it's helpful to set the cross slide dial to 0. This simplifies setting the thread depth. If you have the Baxter 12.5, make note of where on the cross-slide dial you stop once you have positioned the cutter head to barely touch the mortise. This threading head assembly cuts 12 pitch threads, also known as 12 threads per inch or 12 TPI. 12 pitch threads are cut 46 thousandths of an inch deep. Each mark on the cross-slide dial advances the slide 1/1000th of an inch. Therefore, turning the cross-slide dial clockwise 46 notches advances the cross-slide 46 thousandths of an inch, the depth of a 12 pitch thread. If you used the auxiliary slide to position the mortise, setting your cross-slide dial at 0, this means simply counting up to the 46th notch. If you used the cross-slide dial to position the mortise, remembering the number the cross-slide dial was set to, simply count up 46 notches from that number. The lead screw safety knob provides additional drag, preventing the cutter head from digging into the workpiece and spinning it uncontrollably. In addition, keeping your left hand on your chuck firmly, tightening it as you use your right hand to advance the lead screw knob will prevent any kickback. Practice advancing the lead screw knob, tightening your left hand on the chuck while resetting your right hand on the knob, and then advancing the lead screw again. Using your left hand as a safety in addition to tightening the lead screw safety knob should prevent any incidents. There is a nylon bushing on the end of the lead screw safety knob. Tightening it will not damage the lead screw. Return power to the lathe and start it. Turn the lead screw clockwise to advance the mortise into the cutter. Maintain a slow, steady motion, remembering to break the chuck with your left hand as you reset your right hand on the lead screw. Continue advancing the lead screw until you have cut 3 to 4 threads. The cutter head should exit the mortise into the relief chamfer you cut at the bottom of the mortise. Stop the lathe. Since your fingers will be close to the cutter head, it is advisable to remove power from the lathe at this time as you back the lead screw away. Brush the threads with a nylon brush to remove any debris. Check that you have cut clean, sharp threads. If necessary, return power to the lathe and repeat the cutting process to clean up the threads. 2 to 3 passes may be necessary on some materials. Remove power from the lathe. Loosen the lower slide lock. Back the Threadmaster away from the headstock. Uninstall the cutter head and collet. Take the chuck off the threader head spindle and replace it on the lathe spindle. Remove the Threadmaster from the lathe. Make any finishing cuts to the exterior of the box lid before removing the lid from the chuck. The inside of your lid with the female threads is complete. After mounting the body of your box in the chuck and facing off the surface, use the tail of your vernier caliper to measure the depth of the mortise on the lid. Transfer this measurement to the outside of the box. This is the depth of your tenon. Next, using a digital caliper, measure the width of the peaks of the female threads. Zero your caliper. Add twice the depth of your threads to the width of the caliper. In the case of 12 pitch threads, the depth of 1/2 of the threads is 46 thousandths of an inch. Twice that is 92 thousandths. Since you zeroed your caliper, all you need to do is open the jaws an additional 92 thousandths of an inch. Lock the caliper. This is the width of the tenon you need to cut the male threads. Transfer this diameter to the face of the box so that you have a mark to shoot towards as you cut your tenon. Cut the tenon to fit this diameter, making sure the sides of the tenon are perfectly parallel. You can confirm parallel using the inside diameter legs of your vernier caliper. Once your tenon has been cut, chamfer the top of the tenon and cut a relief at the base of the tenon for the threads to escape into. I use a thin kerf parting tool to cut this relief. Cut the power to your lathe and install the cutter head. Return the power to the lathe and confirm the cutter is running true. Cut the power to your lathe again and install the Threadmaster on the lathe. Screw the chuck onto the threader head spindle. Move the workpiece to about 1/4 of an inch from the cutter head. Install the bed stop at this time. The bed stop enables you to back the Threadmaster away from the cutter head to test the thread fit, then return the Threadmaster to the exact same position it began at, allowing you to make adjustments and recut threads in the exact same path they were cut before. Align the cutter head to the tenon with the tenon on the inboard side of the lathe. Advance the threader so that the tenon is just touching the cutter head, similarly to the way you aligned the mortise. If you are using the auxiliary slide to do this, make sure the cross slide dial is zeroed. If you do not have an auxiliary slide, ensure you note the position the cross slide dial is set to. Back the threader head away, then turn the cross slide dial 46 notches clockwise. This will set the depth of the threads to 46 thousandths of an inch for 12 pitch threads. Return power to the lathe. Start the lathe and slowly advance the lead screw knob. Remember to tighten the lead screw safety knob and to maintain positive control of the chuck at all times with your left hand. Cut 3 threads into the tenon. The threads should exit the tenon into the relief you cut at the base. Stop the lathe and back the tenon out of the cutter by turning the lead screw knob counterclockwise. Remove power from the lathe. Loosen the lower slide lock and back the Threadmaster away from the cutter. Test fit the lid. If everything fits, you are finished threading your box. If you need to make adjustments, you can return the Threadmaster to the exact same position it started at due to the bed stop. Make adjustments and recut your threads. Once your lid fits as you like, remove power from the lathe, remove the cutter head, unscrew the chuck from the Threadmaster, and remove the Threadmaster. Return the chuck, still holding the body of your piece, to the lathe. Screw the lid onto the body. Finish the outside of your box completely. Remove the lid, hollow, and finish the inside of the box. Be sure to avoid hitting the threads with your fingers or with tools. Not only could this ruin the threads, but the threads are very sharp and could cut your fingers. 400 grit sandpaper can soften the thread peaks to prevent injury. Well, there you have it. A great little threaded box, little capsule-shaped threaded box. Step by step using Baxter's Threadmaster from Bestwood Tools. I have to say, I'm really excited to have this tool as part of my arsenal because it gives me the ability not only to cut clean, well-fit threads, but to repeat the process. And I can do multiples of a threaded box or vessel and get the same results time and time again. There are a lot of tips and tricks that I could give you from this point, but that would make a much longer video. You'll see me use the Threadmaster in the future videos often, and I will talk about those tips and tricks then. One thing that is available to you at bestwoodtools.com is the instructions that go along with this video. I wrote these referencing Willard Baxter's original instructions, and one of the neat things about it is at the end we have actual photos of the Threadmaster of the 12.5X, which shows every single piece, shows you what it is. There is also towards the end of instructions, there's a chart giving you the different depths of cut for thread pitches. So we worked with 12 pitch or 12 threads per inch. That is a 0.046 or 46,000th depth of cut for the threads. Different pitches have different depths, both higher and lower. So if you follow these instructions and you just plug in the depth of the threads you're cutting, say you're cutting 16 pitch instead of 12, then the only real math you have to do is just doubling that difference, which for 16 pitch is 0.035 or 35 thousandths of an inch. So when you measure the inside diameter of the peaks of the threads on your female threads right here, if you're cutting that pitch, it's 0.035, so you want to add twice that, or 0.070 thousandths of an inch to your tenon. That gives you the appropriate width to mate up those threads and have them match perfectly. We made some adjustments both to the neck on our male threads and just a tiny bit of an adjustment to the top and the chamfer, and that made it so our lid seated perfectly. You can figure out those adjustments, make little alterations in your shop, but what was important here was to teach you how to use the Threadmaster, and we did just that. Thank you very much for joining me here at Watai Wood Turning. I hope to see you back in the shop again, and I hope to share more videos showing the process of using the Threadmaster as I continue to film projects here in my shop. That's it for today. Remember, just one more pass means put the bowl gouge down. We'll see you next time.